Hi, this is Nick Dawson, the Editor-in-Chief of Talkhouse Film, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Film podcast. When I first started talking to Alex Cox about doing something for the Talkhouse, he immediately mentioned Ben Wheatley as a filmmaker he was excited about. So when I was thinking about pairing Cox with another director for a podcast, Wheatley's name naturally came to mind. In many ways, the two are kindred spirits, both making work that is bold, original, idiosyncratic. Cox blazed a trail with Repo Man, Walker, Sid and Nancy, Straight to Hell and Highway Patrolman, while also bringing great, underappreciated cinema to the masses with his BBC film series, Moviedrome, which he curated and introduced. And Wheatley is carving out new, exciting territory with his films, Down Terrace, Kill List, Sightseers and A Field in England. Both could be described as genre filmmakers, but their works actively defy easy classification. The two have been friends over email for a while, but unbeknownst to me, had never spoken before this podcast, let alone met in person. Maybe that will happen soon. As you'll hear over the next 35 minutes or so, Cox and Wheatley have a lot of mutual respect for one another, and a shared adoration of and enthusiasm for great movies. In their conversation, the two talk about their new projects, Wheatley's High Rise, which has just hit the festival circuit, and Cox's Tombstone Rashomon, a multi-perspective western he's now crowdfunding. But also a lot more, from their favourite portmanteau films and the difference between Charlie Kaufman and Charlton Heston, to the forgotten genius of Peter Watkins, and how Repo Man invented supermarket generic brands.
Ben, so it's nice to meet you by audio after meeting you via email.
Yeah, we're slowly moving towards some kind of human connection, I guess, at some point.
One day we will see each other's faces. You know?
Yeah, it's odd.
So what are you doing? What are you doing in Switzerland?
I am screening High Rise, which is the new film that we've made, the adaptation.
Oh, you finished it?
Yeah. So it showed in Toronto last week was the premiere, and then I've just been in San Sebastian, so we were showing it there, and now Zurich, and then London Film Festival, and then hopefully that'll be it done for a bit until it gets its release in March, I think, in the UK.
Great. And how was San Sebastian?
Oh, it was amazing. I've never been before. I mean, I've been to Sitges, which is brilliant, and I love going to Spain anyway. And it went down a storm in San Sebastian, so it was really, really great. And
excellent.
Have you been?
How was the food? How was the food in San Sebastian?
Am I that transparent? That's what. Yeah, it was brilliant. You know, I mean, I love Spanish food, so it was.
Yeah.
Have you shown? You must have shown stuff at San Sebastian.
But I think I went to the festival one time. And I just remember the seafood was fantastic. And this thing happened. This guy from the festival, one of the festival organizers said to me, "You speak English, right?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you want to take somebody out to lunch for us? Because he's an American guest and we want someone who speaks English to take him out and entertain him." So I said, "Okay, who is it?" Jack Palance.
Whoa, come on.
and I got to take Jack. They gave me like a big wad of pesetas, hundreds and hundreds of pesetas, and they sent me to this fishing village with Jack Palance, and we had like an amazing lunch. And he was like such a erudite and nice man, That was incredible. So I loved.
That's incredible. I don't have an anecdote that will match that, but I did meet Charlie Kaufman for about 10 seconds, and I spent my 10 seconds wisely by saying that I thought his films were incredible, and he kind of just nodded at me, kind of slightly embarrassed, but I don't care, because when you meet people that you like their stuff, you have to say you like it, don't you?
And he must be how old do you think he is?
Charlie, he's not. I don't know. I wouldn't like to say. He's not that old, I don't think. Well, he's probably 50 odd, I'd have thought.
Oh, I'm sorry, because our connection is bad. I thought you said Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston? No, he's dead.
Oh.
Not that.
Who did you say? Tell me the name again, because I missed.
Charlie Kaufman. Who wrote.
Oh yes. Okay.
Yeah. No, not Heston. Not Chuck Heston. That would have been, very late at night if I'd imagined meeting him down there.
How did High Rise turn out?
Yeah, good. I mean, it's a pretty crazy fucking movie, and it's interesting. Kind of, I think we were very lucky to get to make it as freely as we did. I mean, Amy Jump, who wrote it, and who wrote Field in England and Sightseers and Kill List and all the films pretty much except for Down Terrace, which I wrote with Rob Hill, and she. Between her writing it and us editing it together, there was hardly any interference at all. There's nothing. We were never under the cosh from anybody. So it's all our own work. We're either we're totally either to blame for it or responsible for it. So it felt like I don't know. It's like getting away one of the last big crazy counterculture books, getting it to the screen in a way, because it just doesn't really happen anymore, does it?
No, that's great. No, that's really good, because I know people have been talking about doing High Rise for a long time. And the guy that I'm working with, Rudy Wurlitzer, he was hired to write a script of High Rise once upon a time, but that never got.
Yeah, I think they've been writing it since there's been versions kicking around since the book was written. Going back to I think Bruce Robinson did one, and who else was it? Yeah, there's loads of different people, and even Nick Rogue was attached to it for a bit as well, right in the late '70s. But I don't know why it never got made. I mean, I think it's a tricky one because it's anti-aspirational, and I think people are always scared of that stuff, because it's it's saying the basic message is saying even if you're really, really rich and comfortable, it can all go to shit, and no one really wants to hear that. It's not
it's a dangerous message.
It's not a comforting message, that, isn't it? But yeah, it was. I mean, and we got to. It's the first film I've done which I've been able to have sets and build sets and kind of control the environment a bit more, and that was a real treat.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? When you actually you can do that, that's really exciting.
Actually, I was thinking of you when because there's a big supermarket scene in it, and we designed all the cans in the supermarket because I didn't want to get into that world of having it's a curly whirly and it's a having people think in a retro way about because the version we did is set in the 70s. So designed everything. But then I was thinking, I remember a really striking thing I remember from Repo Man for me was the design in it and the labels and stuff in the supermarkets, and how it felt like at first you felt like it was a movie that was set a contemporary film, but then it felt like it was almost in an alternate reality.
Yeah, and it kind of was, because it was so, even though it was a contemporary film, but it was also constantly referencing Kiss Me Deadly, so there's this sort of film noir aspect to it, and I think we had actually tried to get product placement and failed. Screw it, we'll just make everything generic.
Yeah, I think that worked really well as well, and it's weird how kind of things catch up, because the actual the Sainsbury's basic, the Tesco's basic range actually looks like the tins of lager and beans in Repo Man now. So it's almost like it's been copied.
And John Lydon, when John Lydon came out with his with a PIL album called Album,
yes,
he gave that the same generic branding. Which I thought was a great honor,
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I saw Repo Man actually, and the thing, it was a film that just from the titles alone, the way it kind of scanned across the map, and the way that the music was so aggressive, it's one of the few films I think when you see it out of the corner of your eye and then you're suddenly grabbed by it. And the only other movie I can think of that happened to me with was I remember my sister rented Goodfellas on VHS, and I hadn't seen it, and I popped my head around the door of her bedroom, and she was watching this thing, and I saw 10 seconds of it, and I went, Jesus Christ, and I had to run out of the room and rent it. and see it, you know. And I think that about the beginning of Repo Man's the same thing, but it's that kind of the spirit of it was you know, and I guess it's across all the films you've made, but the spirit of it is so refreshing and so strong, you know, and outside of the world of other movies almost, you know.
Well, I think that was the first movie that Iggy Pop was involved in terms of doing anything. I mean, later he's been an actor and stuff, and he's acting in a Dario Argento movie now. But I think that was the first film that he actually did anything for, and he was just so perfect, you know, for the main theme.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit, I mean, of that Iggy spirit. If the Iggy spirit can inhabit anything, then it's going to be good.
So was Repo Man the film that had been? Is that an expanded version of? No, you did a short film, didn't you? That you expanded out into a feature first, wasn't it?
No, I did a short. I did a very long short, which is a terrible thing to do. You know, when I was a student at UCLA. I did a short that was like 40 minutes long, called Edge City or Super Citizens, and that is the most stupid thing you can possibly do because it's too short to be a feature and too long to play as a short.
I remember that. Was it?
I cut it.
Have you seen that Jean Roland film where he did that as a short, didn't he? And then he turned it into a feature, and it gets 15 minutes in, and the titles come up, and then then it starts again, and it just expands out, which is brilliant, you know.
Did you see this Argentinian film called Cuentos Salvajes, Wild Tales?
Oh no, I didn't see that yet.
It's like 5 shorts, and they're all with different actors, same director, but all about people driven to rage and acts of revenge. It's really good. But there's no connection really between the stories at all, except this vague thematic thing that they all feature somebody who's really angry.
And does that work? Because sometimes with those portmanteau things, you get one that you don't like, and then you kind of tune out a little bit, or is it they're all as strong as each other? Are they?
Yes, and it's interesting because there's a film that I'm sure you've seen called what do they call it? Histoire Fantastique. You know, the one that the Fellini directed, one of the episodes.
Yeah. And there's Ropo-Gag as well. Is it that one, which is Godard and you know that? What's that one called? Maybe we're talking about the same thing.
No, it's another one because the Fellini one with Toby Dammit has got a couple of other stories. They're all supposedly Edgar Allan Poe. But the Fellini one is really good. The Fellini one's I think it's Fellini's best film.
Wow.
And then the other 2 is one by Roger Vadim and there's one by somebody else, but they're just. But
I was re-looking at New York Stories as well the other day. You know the Scorsese, Coppola, Woody Allen one.
Yes. And
I was remember at the time, obviously, I thought the Scorsese one was the best one, and the Woody Allen one was all right, and I didn't like the Coppola one. But I rewatched it the other day, and it's really odd. It's like the Coppola one. It's almost like a precursor to all the Wes Anderson stuff, you know, in its design and the subject matter and stuff, and it's actually kind of, you know, I think it's bubbling up there as one of my more of a favourite in the 3.
I think it was really because it was about losing a child, wasn't it? As I recall.
Well, it was that thing of because it was written by Sofia Coppola, wasn't it? So it was about her experience of being in New York, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, but I think there's something about a lost child or a dead child or something, because I know that because Coppola his son had been killed, and his sound designer Richard Beggs, his daughter had been killed as well, and so
incredible.
You know, in really tragic and unnecessary circumstances, and so it seemed to me that the film, I had just such a long time ago, I have to see it again, but I felt like there was a lot of sort of sincerity and depth to that episode, you know.
Yeah. But I really I remember loving that Scorsese one because that was it was like his whole. It was a kind of joining movie, wasn't it? I think it was just before Goodfellas, so it's like a compression of all that style. You know, lots of very fast camera movement and punctuation, and then the use of. There was an interesting use of like kind of diegetic sound and pop music all over the top of each other, and accompanying camera moves and stuff. So when the camera would swoop across the loft, you'd get the sound of a car squealing in the distance and stuff. And I remember at the time thinking, that's just incredible, you know.
Yeah. Hey, you use that word diegetic.
Yeah. Am I allowed to?
Now, you know what's funny? Because I had a 4-year gig teaching film at CU, University of Colorado in Boulder, and the first class that I taught, one of the undergraduates said, made a reference to diegetic sound. I didn't know what he was talking about. I don't know what. You know, I mean, oh, you mean source music?
Yeah.
But it's so interesting that the word diegetic exists, because I never heard that word until this 19-year-old student said it to me, and then I realized, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably bandying it about with not knowing what it really means. For me, it's like it's the sound in the room. It's the real sound, isn't it? It's sound that's kind of coming from something, you know.
It's like diegetic music is like when W.C. Fields takes his mandolin out of the box in the Fatal Glass of Fear and plays the mandolin on camera. That's diegetic music.
Yeah. I ended up using it a lot because it's the only clear way of talking about when you're doing sound design. You know where the sound is coming from and how we're gonna Because I think that's the other thing. It gets really complicated, doesn't it? When you go in and out of music, where music is in the room and then music is is non-diegetic, but it's the same track, And it's how do you make that transition between the slightly bassy, echoey version of the music, which is meant to be that they're listening to the more elevated, the music that's in the mind of the film almost.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the fun of sound design, isn't it? That's why there are sound designers, is because they have this whole landscape, this palette of audio and it's quite new sound design. I mean, there's only been sound designers officially for about 30 years or something. So I think Apocalypse Now was one of the first films that officially had a sound designer.
I love the story of Apocalypse Now, where one of his plans was to build a cinema in the middle of America, wasn't it? Where you could only see Apocalypse Now, and then get people to travel to it, and it would be the only cinema in America that would have quadraphonic sound.
Yes,
which is
right.
Really
that was the idea, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The ultimate event film.
I think that the filmmakers of my generation owe an absolute debt to you, Alex, through the for Moviedrome, and I think it completely changed a generation of people, having that all those films collated together and those introductions. I mean, I find it. I find that when I go back and look at what my favourite films are, they definitely haven't fallen far from the choices of the first few series that you did.
How funny! And those were there were almost all films that the BBC had under license already, and they were just sitting in the bin, and they didn't quite know where to put them in the schedule.
I didn't know that.
Wow. One or two, I was able to get them to buy in some Italian westerns. So I think that I was responsible for the screenings of Django and Requiescat and The Big Silence. Those were like the first kind of official screenings of those films, because they'd all been banned. Those are the first official screenings of those films in England.
Yeah.
And other than that, it was just all stuff that they had acquired, and just didn't know what to do with, didn't quite know where to put it in the schedule.
That's mad. I never knew that. I always thought that you'd gone out with a big net and a bag of cash and caught all these movies and brought them in.
No, and in fact, when I would try to do that, but normally it would get shot down, because I'd try and get them to bring in Francesco Rossi films. I go, oh, let's do a double bill of Salvatore Giuliano and the Mattei Affair. And they go, oh, sure, kid. Yeah. They did increase it. It was interesting that over the 5 years that I did it, this thing came in that the BBC, they just weren't going to play any more foreign language stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that would get relegated. Yeah, that would get relegated to the digital channels later. But
I mean, there's nothing anymore, is there, of creating of films, or because there was Film Movie Club or Film Club as well, which was at the same time that used to run on BBC Two, and then there was a couple of other things, and then Channel 4 would run loads of movie, the seasons and stuff, and I remember seeing tons of stuff that way. But now I don't know. I mean, I guess that. Because as digital came in and it separated out all the ways of seeing movies, the national television just stepped away from it,
Yeah, but they shouldn't, because the thing is, you only can access something if you know about it, unless you run into it by chance. And that was the great thing about television, is you could turn on like regular television and be surprised by what was there.
Yeah.
But if you're going to go, if you don't know that there's a film called Yojimbo, you're not going to look for a film called Yojimbo,
No, well, certainly not on the way that digital works now, because you never get all the way to Y, would you?
No, that's right. You never get all the way to Y anyway. Yeah, you're never going to see Z.
Peter Greenaway's screwed, isn't he? Yeah. But yeah, it was. I remember like seeing Alphaville for the first time, and I think that was one of the ones you showed, wasn't it? And just
that was one of the first ones to show.
And it just blew my mind. Sat there going, what is this? It's insane. And he's just trying to deal with the idea of, obviously, that he'd shot in a contemporary at the time city, and that was the future. That you could do that, and it perfectly worked. Also, that basically hidden within that movie is basically Blade Runner, isn't it? There's whole scenes in that film which are the same as Blade Runner, that shot for shot almost. And I think that was my first introduction to Goddard. And then after that, I kind of sought out stuff like Weekend and Buddha Sooth. But so I've got a chance to thank you, and I'm thanking you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for thanking me. That's very nice. And also, but you and I, we also both are in debt to Peter Watkins, are we not?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, Peter Watkins, boy, Culloden and The War Game are two of the most important films I ever saw,
Yeah, well, it's almost he's invented a whole kind of genre of television, and no one talks about it. It's so bizarre to me that. And when I saw the first time I saw Culloden, it's just such a simple idea, isn't it? But it just hadn't been done before.
No, and it was like tough to watch when you saw it on TV the first time. I've never seen anything like it,
Yeah. I mean, and The War Game as well. I mean, it's that. There's a quote from it. Was it as a 10 megaton bomb is like sounds like a door slamming in hell, and I thought, wow.
Yeah.
And it was read out by Michael Aspel, wasn't it?
And it's really weird, because it turns out like about 10 years before The War Game, the British government had commissioned a report called the Strath Report, which no one's ever heard about, which said that in the event of a limited nuclear war in which only 12 bombs were dropped on Britain, the country probably would not be able ever to recover.
Yeah, no doubt.
The infrastructure would fall apart to such an extent that the country just wouldn't recover, wouldn't exist anymore as a viable entity. And so the British government knew that in 1955. What did they do with that information? Oh, forget about it and keep building more bombs.
Yeah. And then, of course,
they knew what the result would be, and they kept building the bombs anyway, because they were just, we don't know what to do, so we'll just carry on.
Well, I suppose at that point it doesn't matter, does it? Once you've got 12, once there's enough bombs to destroy the world, it's just doesn't, you can't destroy it more.
But all you really need to do is break down the infrastructure, because once the infrastructure of food distribution, just like Watkins shows in the movie, once the infrastructure is broken down, people are just going to starve and die of disease and revert to
feudalism, isn't it, basically? Yeah.
Yeah, basically revert to a high-rise type lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. I remember. Do you remember Threads as well? Did you see that, the one that was made later? About the.
I remember it. Yeah. I remember it. And there was an American series called The Day After as well. They did about potential for nuclear war.
Yeah, I mean,
but neither of them scared me like The War Game.
Well, I think Threads scared me because I hadn't. By that point, War Game was still banned, wasn't it? And Threads was
Yes, that's right.
Threads has got one of the greatest Radio Times covers ever, which is a parking attendant with a bag over his head with an eye hole in it and holding a machine gun, and it just says Threads underneath it, And I remember that as a kid going, what the hell's this all about? And then watching it going,
Great, yeah.
this is going to happen, is it? And they were basically teaching. Yeah. Like teaching in schools, going, is this, this is the end kind of thing, But certainly, it was a long time before I visited Sheffield after that because I was so scared by Threads. Yeah. So should we talk a bit about your Rashomon project then? So what's happening?
Yeah. Well, I'm here. I'm in Tucson, Arizona right now. I'm about to go with the man from the Film Commission to look at 2 cowboy towns. One is called Old Tucson, and one is called Mescal. And I'm going to go and scout these locations for for what looks like it's going to be like a $30,000 Western feature about the events outside the OK Corral in 1881. We were trying originally to raise $200,000 because we thought that might be doable, and then we can pay people, minimum wage.
Yeah.
And I did a Kickstarter campaign a couple of years ago when I was teaching to do a science fiction film. Yes. We were looking for $100,000, and we raised more than that. So I'm thinking, easy peasy, man, let's do it again. But the thing is, science fiction is one thing, and a cowboy film with Rashomon in the title is something else. I mean, the number of how many people even know what Rashomon is. This didn't occur to me at the time, but I mean, 1 in 1,000 people maybe know what Rashomon is. And so even though we as cineasts or people who watch Movie Drone probably do know what Rashomon is, but it's, it's a struggle. So the campaign, well, by the time this podcast is audible, the campaign will already have ended, and we'll have raised, some tiny sum, a thousandth of what we need to make the film.
So how are you going to do it then? Is it going to be shot? What are you going to shoot on? What's the camera? Do you think?
Some digital format, but I don't really care, because by the time we shoot, there'll be some new camera out, because we shot. The science fiction film, we started shooting on 35.
Yeah.
Then we shot on 16. Then we shot on a Blackmagic camera.
Yes.
And then we finished the film. We did the last act on infrared.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, I'm up for any kind of format, really.
It'll
be digital, obviously.
I've been testing iPhone. And I've been thinking about doing an iPhone movie for a while now, just because you can shoot out in the street and no one will stare at you and think you're doing something.
Yeah.
And the quality of it's quite interesting, And I think they're, not to sound like an Apple kind of salesman, but they're bringing out one in about 10 days, which is 4K. They reckon so. But I think that the actual cameras, the actual phone I've got in my pocket would do it pretty well, because I kind of like the kind of texture of those lower resolutions is actually quite pleasing, But I was looking also at like older cameras, like the news gathering cameras of the late 90s, early 2000s, which were £60,000 or whatever to buy at the time or more, and now you can buy them on eBay for like £25, especially in America. They're really cheap,
That's the real thing is, people should never buy a camera. Never buy a camera, because it's going to be redundant within 2 years. If you want to buy some equipment, buy a tripod.
Yeah, but also the other thing is I was watching a thing about resolution, and that's always the big thing. They're trying to sell higher and higher resolutions and stuff. And I read this thing that they were saying around the making of Wolf of Wall Street, where they looked at different resolution projection, and that they reckon that if you stand at the back of a normal size auditorium and they play a Blu-ray on a video projector, you can't tell the difference between that and 4K. And if you sit in the middle of the cinema and you look at the screen, you can't tell the difference between 2K and 4K. And if you sit right at the front, then you might, if you're an absolute pedant, be able to tell the difference between 2K and 4K. So basically, the definition has become independent. You know, it doesn't really matter anymore. You know, it's not going to get better and better and better until you're looking at a screen and it looks like reality. It's already hit that point, and it's already in the consumer world. You can get hold of those cameras. So the whole kind of thing of holding out for better and better equipment is gone. It's dead. You know.
No, and also it's just a big scam by Panasonic and Sony and these big companies to sell gear, isn't it? You know, because 4K is already redundant because they're coming out with 8K.
Yeah, but that really
it doesn't matter that there's no, there's no system to screen either 4K or 8K material. You know, but it doesn't matter because they're going to sell the consumer that those products anyway. And
the thing that opened my mind to it was seeing Feston and the early Dogma movies, and I had the camera that they shot Feston on, which was like I think it's called a PC-1 or something, which is a little mini DV camera, and
yes.
And up to that point, I'd always thought I could never be a professional. I could never make a film because I need to make a short film on 16mm, and I could never work out how I would ever raise the money to do it. And I watched that film and went, "Fuck me, it doesn't matter. You know, this looks brilliant." And because it's grainy, it's good. You know, it's not. It's the only thing. The thing that stops you is the sound. You know, you can't tolerate bad sound, but you can certainly, as long as you can see their eyes, the image can be recorded any which way. You know.
That's right, and you're right. And so then it becomes, because the ability to create good images is inexpensive, and ubiquitous. But good audio is another matter. You've got to really work on that. Still that hasn't changed.
Yeah. That's always a nightmare. So you're going out there with it. You've got, how are you doing it then? Have you got like a kind of like a guerrilla crew? Are you going to shoot it all handheld, or is it going to be? What's your scheme for it?
No, because I've got a tripod still, but no, we'll figure it out. I mean, I think what we have to do is we have to get to the end of the campaign, which will be 4 days from now. I'm hoping that maybe, weirdly enough, that we might be able to get some actual investment in it as well.
Yeah.
So we'll end up with a very small budget to make a very weird multi-perspective Western on the events outside the Gun K Corral. Corral. And we'll do that next spring when it's not too hot.
Yeah.
And I'm figuring out now, so after my location scout, I'm actually going to go to the University of Arizona and talk to the deputy director of that program, who's a very nice woman, about getting students to work on it.
Yeah.
Poor students once again being abused by old filmmakers with no budget. But it's interesting, because when I was a young filmmaker, I wasn't interested in young people at all. I was interested in like old guys like Harry Dean Stanton and Dennis Hopper,
Yeah.
And now I'm totally bored by old guys. I'm actually much more interested in what young people are going to do, because they're going to inherit the mess that we've made. They're going to have to deal with this nightmare.
Yeah.
So it's much more fun now just to be working with people in their 20s.
It's odd, isn't it? I remember when I was in my 20s, and we and you'd be thinking, I can't make any films because everyone I know is too young, and they look really young on camera. We need old people because that's what serious stuff is. And then, as soon as you get to 40, you look back and go, now I'm going to make a film about my childhood, because young people are much more interesting than old people.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, when we made the film Field in England, which was done on a very low budget, done and shot very quick. One of the things
it's a wonderful film. That's just a wonderful film, and the acting in it is tremendous.
Oh, cheers, man! Thanks. But it was the thing that one of the reasons we were able to do it at low budget was, and it's the same thing that holds true to cowboy movies as well, I think, is that no one changes their clothes.
Yes.
It's brilliant. So you only have to get one set of costumes.
Yes, that's right. That's right, because our whole story takes place in 2 minutes.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
They walk out of the saloon. It takes them 1 minute 45 seconds to get to the gunfight location and 30 seconds to kill people. And so there's no costume changes.
because I did a lot of research on ballistics recently for another film project, and I think that and also for field in England as well, because of they were saying in the English Civil War it would take a man's weight in musket shot to kill him, as in you'd have to fire that many musket balls before you hit someone. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think it was exactly the same with the pistols and rifles at that point, wasn't it? It's like, they're
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, I think in 30 seconds, I think at least as many bullets got fired off, and most of them missed their targets.
Yeah, because I think under any kind of stress, it's very, very difficult to shoot anything that's not completely tied down and in front of you. Apparently, unless you're a trained, SAS bloke or a Delta Force
sniper.
Yeah, American sniper. Yeah. But so that's going to be a challenge, I think. No, I'm sorry to be really dull about the technical stuff, but it's going to be a challenge with the using guns and stuff on a low budget. That always scares me slightly.
Yeah. A lot of that you can fix now, because in the old days, you used to go, oh, God, did you see the muzzle flash and that kind of thing? But of course now you put the muzzle flash in digitally and put the smoke in digitally and stuff. So in that sense, it'll be a little bit easier, but it'll be tight. But the thing is, it's also that's going to force us to be very, very disciplined and structure it very carefully. So we know what it is we're going to do before we do it.
Do you think you go for more like? I always love that thing when you look at Assault on Precinct 13 and you see how storyboarded and how structured it all is. Do you think will it be that kind of approach, or will it be the way that digital work can work, where you can have multiple cameras, like 3 or 4 cameras, and then you only have to block it once and then go, and you don't have to do loads and loads of coverage?
That's a good question, isn't it? I don't know the answer yet. I've got to figure that out.
Yeah.
As we go along,
You'll find
what the script is, how to shoot it. I'm thinking in a way I'd like to kind of ridicule the Errol Morris approach, where you get a big gray thing and hang it behind the interview subject,
mm-hmm.
and then you shoot it in 4K, so you could push in and move it around and do these fake little camera moves and stuff. Because I find Errol Morris's stuff totally bogus, and so I kind of like to deconstruct his poor documentary technique, I'll
tell you what you should look at, which is brilliant, is they're doing a thing with the GoPro cameras now, where they've got a rig that holds like 20 GoPros in it, and you can shoot it's basically like an image hoover, so it sucks in like everything around it, so they're all pointing outwards, and then you can re-camera that afterwards, so you could so if you put it in the middle of the action, it would film everything in like a dome around it, and then you can decide where the camera would be within it.
Interesting, yeah. There's so many possibilities. But I shall defer to the shooter. I always defer to the cinematographer, because I'm not a proper shooter. So whoever she is, she can decide.
Yeah, I don't ever operate the camera because it's too heavy.
Yeah, it's too heavy. It's too much. It's hard work,
Yeah.
Hey, I can see the Chevy Impala coming up the driveway here with the film commissioner or her minion on board. So I guess this is my ride. Is here to take me to the Western town.
Oh wow! It's been lovely talking to you, Alex.
It's been great talking to you too. And listen, very, very good luck with the release of High Rise, and I look forward to seeing you in person one of these days.
Yeah, you too. Good luck with your film, man. I'm sure it's going to be a wild ride.
I think it will be a wild ride, but I'm looking forward to it very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in 2016.
Very good. Goodbye, sir.
Cheers, man.
This is Nick Dawson from Talkhouse Film, and you've been listening to Ben Wheatley and Alex Cox on the Talkhouse Film podcast. And as an important footnote, Cox's crowdfunding campaign for Tombstone Rashomon has in fact been extended by another month, so go visit the project's Indiegogo page and help the man make his movie. This episode was engineered and edited by Elliot Einhorn. For more filmmakers talking film and TV, visit thetalkhouse.com/film. Subscribe to Talkhouse Film and Talkhouse Music podcasts on iTunes, where you can find all our previous episodes. And while you're there, please rate and review if you can.